You know the subscription razor scam? The endless cycle of repeat payments for mediocre blades? The Brio Beardscape is the one-time investment that ends that cycle forever. They call it convenience, but it's a subscription to planned obsolescence. The Beardscape is how you declare independence from that system. This isn't just about saving money, it's about ending the mental drain. The ceramic blade stays sharp for years, not months. There are no cartridges to track, no reorder cycle. You buy it once and that part of your life is simply handled. It's a permanent solution, not a temporary rental. Declare your independence, own your tools. The code is middleground at getbrio.com.
Cancel culture gets talked about a lot. But here's what nobody's talking about. There's no sentence. You get canceled, and that's it. Forever. My guest today, Tim Kelley, is actually doing something about that. I'm Joe. This is the MiddleGround Mic. And this one's going to make you think.
All right, everybody. Tim Kelley, welcome to the MiddleGround Mic. Thanks for being here. I appreciate taking your time and joining us on the show.
Oh, I'm delighted. This is going to be very entertaining. I know it already.
This is the MiddleGround Mic!
We had a great conversation. I was looking at your resume. I was telling you before the show, you got my T on there, Navy commanding officer, global corporate advisor, and now you're one of the leading voices on uncancellation / really going after the cancel culture. Connect the dots for us on some.
Yeah, a lot of my adult life I've spent teaching leaders and businesses about purpose. And there's a sort of occupational hazard with that, which is I have to take my own medicine. So I'm always looking for new and interesting ways to manifest my own purpose in life. And I'm really devoted to trying to create a better society that works for everyone. And something I know you can appreciate in the middle ground sense. And it's surprising how intelligent people who really want to make things better seem to believe that attacking others and making them wrong is the way to do that. And that's just a disease across the political spectrum. And people will generally agree with that, no matter their political beliefs. Are we too politically polarized? Almost anyone will say yes. And then they'll blame the other side for it.
Every time.
It's those assholes. So it's funny, what I've taken upon myself is trying to help the people who got canceled and didn't deserve to be canceled, or at least didn't deserve to be canceled permanently. And it turns out to be the vast majority of people who get canceled have done either little wrong or no wrong, or they have done something wrong, but we're not giving them a chance to learn from their mistake and do better. When my son was little and he would screw something up, I might get angry at him, I might punish him or whatever, but then I'd show him how to do it correctly. And if he did it correctly the next time, then we're fine. And that seems to be missing in our culture today, right? And there's just no forgiveness available for people who've made mistakes. It's not a death sentence, it's an exile. It's permanent exile. And they lose their opportunity to make a difference, to contribute, to generate value for other human beings. Many of them are people who would love to be working to create a better world, and they have no opportunity to do so. And it's a tremendous wasted resource. And probably the thing that called me to it more than anything else was seeing how little support those people were getting. If someone's accused of a crime and they have no money whatsoever, we give them a free lawyer to defend themselves, even if they're obviously guilty. They still get a free lawyer and they still get their day in court. And whoever wants to accuse them of whatever has to prove their case. And there's standards that have to be met with the evidence and all this kind of stuff, right? Before we'll take that person's freedom away. And people generally agree that that's how it should be. But that's not how we do it with cancel culture at all.
Well, no, and that brings it to you. What kind of crisis did you witness that really made you realize that this wasn't just bad luck? It was a systemic problem that needed solving, kind of piggybacking off of what you were just saying.
It's hard to trace it to a specific incident. I will say that over the years, I would sort of accidentally coaching people who'd been thrown out of office, government ministers who'd been deposed, in some cases sent overseas to get rid of them, CEOs who'd been fired, high-level executives who'd been fired, different people where their career took a sudden turn for the worse. And so I was sort of accidentally developing the skill set that I needed for this. And I have this bad habit. I'm something that I like to call a change agent. And my definition of a change agent, you're probably a change agent, sir. But my definition of a change agent is someone who feels a personal responsibility for making things better. And those of us who have this disease, it's like a little voice in the back of our heads telling us, go ahead, fix it. So I'll be watching the news. I can remember as a teenager watching the news and seeing something going on in the Middle East and thinking, wow, somebody should do something about that. And a little voice in my head says, yeah. And so watching the whole cancel culture thing, I realized, I actually know what to do about this. I have the necessary skills, and there's a gap here. There's a problem, right? So when someone gets sent off to prison, a lot of problems with that system, but the term, unless you've done something really horrible, the term ends and they release you and they give you your stuff back. And then, depends on where you live and which state and what, but there are programs and stuff to help people like that find a job and find a place to live and get their driver's license renewed and whatever else they need to function in society. It's not perfect, but there are people trying to solve that problem. And I realized there's nobody trying to help the people who've been canceled. We're just going to put in the trash can and let them rot for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Very talented people who've spent their adult lives developing highly refined skills that we need. So I can't answer the question any better.
I mean, I was going to say, you were talking a little bit about Puerto Rico before came on the show.
Yeah.
From your end, you're arguing the cancellation. The real crisis isn't the cancellation itself, but the absence of any defined path back.
That's right.
Why is the system with no sentence, no proper resolution, no re-entry dangerous than the initial punishment?
Well, fine as long as it's someone else, right? And then when it's your turn and somebody on social media accuses you of something and you quickly go in there to say that it's not true and everyone ignores you and listen to the person who's accusing you, and suddenly your friends aren't returning your calls and you're applying for a job or trying to get a book published or something like that, and people talk to you and then suddenly they ghost you because they read something online and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to deal with that. And when that happens, it doesn't matter whether you're innocent or not. That's the thing that's really shocking to people. Being innocent gets you very far at all in that situation because it's all a competition of narratives. And the narrative of the accuser is almost always more compelling, whether true or false, than the narrative of the defender. And I just recently wrote an article on Substack about Kevin Spacey about this, right? Now, it's entirely possible that Kevin Spacey did some bad things. I can't say for sure. There's smoke,
right,
and there might be fire. But what did Kevin Spacey do? Kevin Spacey went to court over and over and over again in different contexts. He did it in the UK. He did it in, I think, Massachusetts.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Faced all of his accusers. And in every case, the charges were dropped or he was found innocent or not liable or whatever, exonerated in 100% of those things. Now, as I said, I don't know whether Kevin Spacey did anything wrong, but it seems like lots of innocent verdicts didn't buy him anything. I mean, he kept him out of prison, but he's not getting any acting roles anytime soon, right?
No.
And he believed, this is what the article is about, he believed that being exonerated would allow him to resume his acting career.
You would think
Too bad, right? Now,
yeah, I think it would, but
you don't have all the answers, but it seems like an innocent verdict should count for something.
Supposed to.
And it's supposed to, right? I mean, someone accused me of rape and I went to court and proved that I hadn't done it. I would hope that I would get to go on with my life, but maybe not. Maybe the fact that I'd been accused would be enough.
Well, some people, and I've been guilty of this, heat of the moment, but then when I kind of out of it, I'm kind of like, let's kind of back to reality here, good. If you cross the line, you should be gone forever. Just certain things. And your initial reaction is like, man.
Well, I'm not seeking Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, Ghislaine Maxwell as clients. Let's be clear, right? I'm like a defense lawyer who's going to defend everyone. I get to decide who I work with and who I don't. And there's certain people where there is sufficient evidence, and in many cases it's been adjudicated in court, right? There is sufficient evidence to say, you know what? This definitely happened. And now I'm not saying that those people couldn't be redeemed, But boy, the bar would be exceedingly high to come back from something like that.
Yeah,
I'm much more concerned about guys like Ricky Rosselló, the governor of Puerto Rico, where this whole internet chat got published. And it was later shown that the internet chat that was published had been modified. Too late, already out of office, right? Prosecutor looked into it, no crimes committed, right? So, throw excrement on somebody and smear them much faster than they can scrape it off. And so polarized environment gets abused by people. And a friend a woman was working up a case in HR against him for sexual harassment, which he hadn't done. And I don't know what she was pissed at him about. She was working on this case and everything, and he let it go a long way. And right before she pulled the trigger, he said to her, "You do know I'm gay, right? Joke's on you." And so she had to drop the whole thing because it was completely implausible. I kind of would have been inconvenient, but I kind of wish he had let her do it. So, because the false accusers rarely pay any price at all.
Yes, 1,000%, man. They'll ruin people's lives and walk away with no consequence.
That's right.
No,
The other really
knowing that they
interesting
did it.
case, that's right. The other really interesting case is the person who did do something wrong. I've had clients who went to prison for financial crimes, say, right? That the person embezzled or, filed their taxes right or something like that. I knew one guy who slapped his girlfriend once, right, in front of witnesses. And he got kind of that, right? Understandably. But this is talking about grooming hundreds of 13-year-olds here, right? Or repeated date rape or genocide or anything like that. And so where's the place where we allow someone who actually did make a mistake to learn from that mistake, show that they've learned from that mistake, and then become a contributing member of society again? Because they get treated roughly the same as the serial rapists do. The sentence is almost identical.
Yeah, that's the problem for me is, the insanity of it. Like back a little bit to the Puerto Rico, just inside the war room from your end of it. A little bit more of like they're allowed to, I don't know, anything, a little bit of insider.
Right. I wasn't there. I wasn't involved when it happened. I met the governor when he was already an ex-governor and had already written a book about it.
Okay.
And what happens is that the people who get canceled, often I meet them 2, 3, in some cases, one woman is a canceled psychiatrist 10 years after the fact. And in many cases, they haven't done anything. Definitely not the thing they were accused of, right? And so they're like to get back in the game and they don't see a way. And they're traumatized by this because it's like you're just going about your life and all of a sudden no one will talk to you, right? You get fired and then no one will talk to you. And it's so being ostracized. We're herd animals, we humans, right? We evolved living in tribes. 10, maybe 200, somewhere in that range, right? Probably usually between about 50 and 250 or something like that. Or, we'll say 150, some say 200, some say 250. There's a little debate about how big those tribes got, but that's where we grew up. And if you lived in one of those tribes and the tribe threw you out, that was probably it. You're probably dead, right? And so we take very poorly to being ostracized. It stimulates the same circuits in the brain as physical pain. And it's traumatic. And so whether the person did the thing they're accused of or not, when they get canceled, they're traumatized, right? And there's not a support network set up for them, right? There's no one's trying to help them deal with the trauma. Often they don't even know they're traumatized because people think about trauma from like near a bombing or in a car accident or having, a limb or watching a loved one die, or those things happen. I've been traumatized. I need to like therapy or something. But what about when people put a bunch of stuff about you on Facebook? Turns out that's trauma too.
Yeah.
And so often I'm helping them kind of if they've been traumatized and helping them clean it up. And sometimes I have to refer them to, help or something if they, I'm not a therapist. So if it's mild, I can, some suggestions. But if it's severe, they need someone who's qualified for that stuff, right? And so even just explaining to them that they're probably traumatized is support, right? So they have to get through that first. And then after that, they have to find a way to make meaning of what's happened. And we're meaning-making machines. We want to understand everything. We understand not just what happened, but why it happened. And until we understand why something happened, we can't really get past it. And so these people have to understand why this happened. And if they can come up with a better why than this happened randomly to me and I didn't deserve it, that's not a very good why. It might be factually accurate, but it's not a good why at all. If we can get past that and learn from the event and evolve as a result of the event, then they get to have a life. Then now they can move forward and they can actually use what they've learned to try to have other people allow them to move forward, if that makes sense, right? The collective generally has to say, okay, you can get on with your life. It's all right. We willing to, go to the store and have a job and have a relationship and the stuff that the rest of us take for granted, right?
And that's, man, you don't even realize how much of those things, take for granted until you're in that situation. And it was something that was just so automatic, like putting shoes and now it's gone. And
That's
a lot
right.
of people don't think about it, in that.
You couldn't walk out your door because there's a crowd of people screaming on your lawn.
Not wrong, not one bit. Burn millions, tens of millions, when I was reading some of your stuff. Why is it almost always a waste of money from what you see?
What a waste of money.
Just dumping millions and millions into these PR firms when they're being canceled.
Yeah, so the support that does exist for canceled people generally takes two forms. One is PR firms and the other is lawyers. The lawyer thing can be useful in a couple different ways. One is, like, one guy is a doctor who's accused of battery for touching the belly of a female patient who scheduled an appointment with him and met him in his doctor's office, put on a smock because she was having abdominal symptoms. And I'm like, really?
That's what you should. I mean, that's what they're supposed to do.
So he has to hire lawyers because he'll go to prison if he doesn't defend himself properly. And he's losing his medical license in all the different states. Even though the court case hasn't happened yet, the mere fact that he's been accused, no adjudication whatsoever, the fact that she lodged the accusation is sufficient to get his medical license canceled in like states or something. Really? We don't interested in vetting the facts of the case before ruining this guy's career? So that's one thing you need a lawyer for, stay out of prison. The other one is, and this is another case I'm thinking of a guy whose ex-girlfriend went on an absolute rant online accusing him of all sorts of stuff. And so he did a defamation suit against her. Not because she wasn't going to get any money from her for that, just to have a judge tell her to stop and to take the stuff down, right? So that's the other thing. Neither of those solves the cancellation problem, though, unfortunately. The PR firms can help more directly in that they can go online on your behalf and actually put up a fight with the people who are the trolls. Often in these cases, people generally have whatever opinion they have, but there's a small number of people who are actively going after this person ruthlessly. And like, I know of cases where the trolls are absolutely lied their butts off, and they're now the subject of criminal activity because of all the lying that they were doing. Trolls can be vicious. So that's a small number of people, but a number of my clients have a couple of trolls who follow them around. It's sort of like having your own personal demon walking around 3 feet behind you, waiting for you to say or do anything. It's like, oh my God, that would be horrible, right? So the problem goes back to this competition of narratives, right? And so what I try to explain, the quote that you found interesting, innocence is not a defense in the court of cancel culture. The reason is because humans make decisions with emotion and justify them with logic. Yes. And if you're wondering, how did thus and such person get elected or whatever, there's your answer, right? That's why. Why did this person do this crazy thing? Could be someone you know. He marry her, Right? People make decisions with emotion, justify with logic. That's why people sell stocks right after a market crash. Everyone will tell you that is the exact wrong time to sell stocks. And every time the market crashes, a bunch of people sell their stocks, right? Why? Emotion, right? So here's the problem with that. If I've been accused of doing something wrong, the person saying all the stuff about the horrible stuff I did to them, that will generate a lot of emotion in you, the listener. Whether it's true or false, it will generate a lot of emotion. When I say, oh, no, I didn't do those things, and here's the proof, that generates almost no more emotion, wins. Yeah. So the accuser prevails, not because my narrative is false, not because their narrative is true. They prevail because their narrative evokes emotion and mine does not. And so that's fundamentally what I'm doing with my clients. So some of them I'm just helping them get on with their lives. I help find a new purpose and a new path, a new way to make a difference. But many of them, they want the public to view them differently. And the solution to that is to have a true narrative about their experience and what happened to them and what they learned and how they grew and how they're going to make the world a better place. And that narrative has to be more emotionally compelling than the narrative of the person who accused them. That's the only way. That's your let out of jail free card. And that's tricky to do and almost impossible to do by yourself.
Wow. I'm thinking about that. Leads me to ask this question. What makes someone uncancelable? So
Dave Chappelle is my favorite example of this.
Yes. I don't know if you've ever heard of Tom McDonald.
Let's take a quick break.
The closing argument for the Brio Beardscape, I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to put the unvarnished facts on the table. The fact is, their trimmer drifts and it costs you time and consistency. The Beardscape adjustments lock in place and it gives you a perfect result faster. The fact is, their motor fades and pulls. The Beardscape maintains constant voltage for a clean cut every time. And the fact is, their system is a collection of mediocre parts. The Beardscape is one tool, one charger, one simple, reliable routine. The case is closed, the evidence is overwhelming. One side offers you a daily compromise, the other offers you control. My advice is to choose control. The audition is over, my prescription stands. The code is MiddleGround at getbrio.com.
I have heard of him, but I don't remember who he is. I'm terrible with names.
He's kind of woke rapper, is kind of where the people put him in there. And he's like, if I remember correctly, he's 100% independent, doesn't have a record label, doesn't have a distributor. He distributes it through his friend's warehouse. So he can literally just say whatever he wants. There's
and
no,
does, apparently.
Yeah, it goes, and they tried to cancel me on now I'm worth $30 million.
Right. Yeah, and there are people who say things that are offensive, and there are people who say things that are deliberately offensive. And it's okay to be upset with those people. I'm fine with that. It's okay not to buy his albums, right? It's okay. All that stuff is cool. So I spent a lot of time in the military, and one of the things we do right on day one is take an oath to defend the Constitution. And freedom of speech is pretty close to the beginning. That's in the First Amendment, right? It's not in the basic stuff about there will be a president and a vice president of Congress, right? But the very first thing they added after that was about freedom of speech. And so I've been around other military people who are saying, oh, I can't believe these people say this thing. Someone should stop them. And I say, an oath to defend that person's right to say that.
Yes.
Boy, do they look unhappy when I say that to them.
it's I remember.
I agree either. Like, right. I absolutely disagree with everything. I think you are a horrible human for even thinking those things, much less saying them. And it's still my job to make sure you have a right to say it. And that's we've that one along the way somewhere, right?
I remember
that just because I disagree with you doesn't mean you shouldn't be allowed to talk.
Right. Yes. In the 90s, I believe, if I'm quote is, I may not agree with you, but I'll defend your right to say whatever you want or something along those lines. And I just remember hearing it all the time.
Right. Same as like, do a march through my town. I can stand there and boo them all I want, but assemble, blah, blah, blah. Boy, on the right and left have terrible trouble with it because the narratives are so polarized. Our narrative is right, their narrative is wrong. How do we keep their narrative from spreading as if it were a disease or something like that? And I don't think that's an effective way to live together in a country. I don't think that's useful. I don't think it's productive. And in fact, the research on collective intelligence would say it's actively counterproductive. That if you want a group to be smart, a group of people who are going to make decisions to be as smart as possible, you don't want them all to agree. You actually want a diversity of opinion and even cognitive diversity, meaning people think about things completely differently than each other. And if you have that, those can allow the group to work its stuff out. You will get far better solutions than if you start with a group who all have the same basic political opinion and view the world the same way at the outset. You will get pathological results if you do that. And so us all being in our little camps like that makes us collectively, not individually, collectively stupid.
Yeah, have yes men around you. That's the number one thing in leadership.
Right.
You got to have somebody. I say I'd rather have somebody look me in the face and tell me "fuck you" per se, and then honest with me, and we go, okay, what's the real problem here? Now let's try to solve it.
That's right.
That's how humans are actually naturally wired. We've just tried to train ourselves to not be that way.
Well, it's a consequence of various things, like the way the political system works. It favors polarization.
Yes.
The way the social media algorithms work favor polarization. If you and I went and put the same search terms in Google, we would get different results.
Yes.
Because Google would filter those results based on what it knows about our beliefs and opinions. And so I can become an echo chamber of one by talking to AIs and doing Google searches and watching YouTube videos, because all of those things will learn what my opinions are and what I want to see and want to hear, and feed me more and more and more of it, and figure out what outrages me and feed me more of that too.
Right.
Regardless of my political views. And so we create all these little mini echo chambers like that. And now when someone says or does something we don't like, oh my God, they're evil and must be destroyed.
I mean, you don't want them to be destroyed. I mean, they haven't done nothing serious. I'll respect it, because that's where you seem to really excel. What can a leader do that, I want to make yourselves
Yeah, you are being uncancelable. I didn't answer the question. Thank you for coming back to that.
Yeah, or arrogant, or sociopath.
So right. It's interesting. It can be difficult to cancel narcissists and sociopaths, actually, because the self-reinforcing nature of their narratives. But so what makes someone uncancelable is if they're willing to learn and grow from anything. And so if you're, another one that really helps is having a purpose. And I'll explain why. So one of the things I coach the leaders who I'm uncanceling to do is get super on their purpose in life. What is the big thing that you're going to do, and with however many years you have left, that's going to benefit Earth, society, me, everybody else? Like, what plan for making this planet better than it was when you arrived? And they have to find something that they actually really care about enough that they'd be willing to devote a significant amount of time and energy to it, because they're so passionate about it. And it only works if it's authentic. If it's like a thing, it doesn't work, right? And here's how that helps, which is if you're actively engaged in trying to make the world a better place, and I hear that you've done something bad, and I'm thinking about, here's the thing, do I want to cancel him? Yes or no? I now have to weigh the cost. If I cancel you, I don't get that better world that you're trying to create. So I better really want to cancel you, right? If you're going to solve global warming or poverty or something like that, and I know that if I cancel you, that's not going to happen. I'm using extreme examples, but just to illustrate the point, right? If I know that I'm not going to get that future that I would love because I've canceled you, then that makes me less eager to cancel you. Does that make sense?
No, it makes
so
a whole
now
lot of
I'm
sense.
weighing the cost, not necessarily consciously. And you can see this in examples like Michael Jackson and R. Kelley, where there's a lot of people who just love their music. And I put on my website, cancelleader.com, in the resources, I put on this hilarious little clip from, I think it's from The Daily Show or something, where a correspondent is talking about why he doesn't want to believe that R. Kelley did all these bad things, because then he can't listen to his music anymore.
I mean, it's
right?
like, you're like,
and never got canceled despite a lot of smoke. Now, defense, never a guilty verdict. Boy, if I were a betting man, I would just bet there was something going on. I don't know exactly what, something going on there. So you want to make it too costly for other people to cancel you, because you're doing so much good, because you've learned so much from the cancellation experience, whether you were guilty or innocent, because you've evolved into a better leader because of what happened. And now you're going to use your improved leadership skills that you got from growing and evolving as a result of this event to create a better world, right? And it's funny, if in the case of, like I said, Dave Chappelle is my best example of this. So Dave Chappelle loves to crack jokes at the expense of trans people, right? The trans people are not amused by this, nor are their friends, and worked very hard to get him canceled. And so he went on a Netflix special and explained why they had failed, which I thought was fascinating. And I actually encourage my clients to watch it. It's called The Dreamer. And what he says in that, I have a quote on my website about that. What he says about that is he says, in any given moment, the person with the biggest dream wins that moment. I am a very powerful dreamer. So what he's saying is my dream of free speech and everyone being a legitimate target for humor and me wanting to do my particular brand of humor, my dream for doing that is a more powerful dream than certain elements of the trans community. I'm not saying it's all of them by any stretch, certain elements of the trans community who would like to see me canceled. That's basically what he's saying. And it's what I was saying either, right? Most compelling narrative wins. That's what I said before, because people make decisions with emotion and justify them with logic.
I mean, you're right. I'm spot on when you're thinking about it like that. So the power dynamic, right? That's kind of, I guess it can be considered controversial, right? But to me, it's got to be some of the most important part of thing of what you do, right? Because power is, trying to think of the movie, but power is everything. Your core weapon of cancel culture, exclusion, reputation destruction, is a form of toxic femininity.
That's right. Toxic feminine power. So the Megan McArdle of the Washington Post is the one who first used that term. I was trying to get an article out I wanted, but she beat me, so she gets credit. So I use the term, shadow feminine power is what I use. Toxic femininity is a little harsh for my taste, but it's not wrong. Shadow feminine power is perhaps a little more spot on. It's a very interesting social phenomenon that you read up on the green meme and spiral dynamics if you really like listeners, if you want to really get into this. I'm not going to go into that much detail, but you can find it in there. And it's a form of win-lose thinking that is very much about defending the underdog, the environment, the earth, disenfranchised people, all that stuff, which is entirely appropriate, right? I'm for all of those things. The issue is that the way it's done by the people who are absorbed in this, and in the US and in many other countries, it's the far progressive left that exhibits this phenomenon, is that basically, if you don't agree with us, you're a horrible person, right? If your views or your language deviates at all from what we deem to be correct and acceptable, even though what's correct and acceptable seems to evolve every 6 months or so, right? It's not just LBQ anymore. It's now like 10 long or something. It keeps growing. I can't keep up, right? But that's the correct term. And if you're doing anything else, that's wrong, even though that was right yesterday. It's not right today, right? Very unforgiving, which is terrible salesmanship, by the way. If I want to change your mind about something, if I want you to think differently about gender or the environment or something that you have perceived to be settled and not something that's changing, and I want to convince you, no, I want you to rethink this. I want you to think about this very differently. Attacking you and making you wrong for holding a view that lots of people have held for thousands of years isn't a great first move in a sales process. Right? Rather than saying, I'm going to persuade you to view the world differently, that would not be the right first move. So this is a big beef I have with the far progressive left, because I actually appreciate what they're trying to do, like trying to make it legal and safe for gay people or Muslims or Asians or trans people to live in society alongside the rest of us and have jobs and have lives and, do all the stuff that the rest of us do. Back to, oath to defend the Constitution, all for it. Whether I personally find those individuals people I would want to hang out with or not, that's an entirely personal decision. But that they have a right to do that, no question, in my mind,
yes,
right?
1,000%, man.
Trouble separating those two, right? So I absolutely salute the far left's desire to improve the lot of these people. So it's not okay to just crap on them and destroy their lives because they're part of this ethnic group or this religious minority or whatever. Totally there. But then demanding that everyone else think or view a certain way or speak a certain way as the means, that's very difficult. And so here's where the toxic femininity comes in. Think back to junior high school, how the boys were behaving, how the girls were behaving, right? So the boys are exhibiting toxic masculinity. We're talking about like 13 years old, 15 years old. That's when the hormones start to kick in and the impulse control hasn't shown up yet. So, beat you up and take your lunch money and then give you a wedgie and throw your books down the stairs, right? I'm flashbacks here.
Oh, no, I get it. I was there once too.
I'll be completely honest. At different times, I was on either side of that dynamic.
I've been there. Definitely been there, man.
And so when we see that in adults, we call it toxic masculinity. Yes. And that's fair, right? If I were to walk into your studio and beat you up because I didn't like something that you had said, not appropriate behavior for an adult. We also punish 13-year-olds for it, but we're a little more forgiving because we understand that they're still learning how to drive the vehicle, right? So that's so people who it's not males, but it's often males who use their power with complete disregard for the impact on others. We call that toxic masculinity when it's being done in that kind of overt way. So I've decided that I'm going to bomb your country for no reason or whatever, right? So, but the thing society's been involved in for the past 100 years or so is elevating women's level of power in society. Entirely appropriate, in my view, right? I remember as a kid wondering, why are we, like the equal rights thing just didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, I was like, what? One of the consequences of that is that we get more collaboration, more creativity, more emotional intelligence in executive suites and boardrooms and stuff like that when you add more women, right? Back to that thing about everyone not agreeing and thinking about things differently, more collective intelligence, all good. The other thing you get with that is the shadow of it, the dark side of it, which is what the teenage girls are doing in junior high. What are they doing? Well, they're usually not beating each other up. Usually not. They express power differently. There, it's who's in and who's out. And who are we whispering about behind her back? And who are we not inviting to the sleepover? And who are we shaming without the person knowing where it's coming from? And all this inclusion, exclusion. So the light side of that is inclusion. And that's the stated goal of the progressive left, more inclusion. Great. The shadow of it is exclusion. Oh, you didn't say the pronouns correctly. Now no one will ever talk to you again, right? So the exile, the tarring and feathering, that exclusion thing, that's a feminine power dynamic. And I'm not saying it's only being done by women, it's being done by men too. Just like you give women a lot of political power, and sometimes you get to see toxic masculinity displayed by them as well, right? So now we have to deal more with both, and we have a lot more experience recognizing and dealing with toxic masculinity at scale, like anxiety, than we do toxic femininity. Right? That's why we have things like impeachment clauses and stuff like that, is because of the understanding that if you give someone enough power, they might start abusing it and you might regret it and you might want to take it away from them. Now, those systems don't work perfectly, but we don't have anything like that for dealing with the toxic feminine power. Nothing even close. It's not even talked about barely. Right? People complain about cancel culture, but they're not seeing it through this lens. This is a large-scale social phenomenon, and we don't have experience designing guardrails for it, and we're paying a heavy price.
I mean, we are. You see some of these politicians, especially when on the female, and I'm not saying all women, but when they're, listening or watching, know exactly what I'm talking about. That pops in your head in some scenario. They will try to use that same sort of assertiveness that toxic masculinity does. It's just different person, different gender. Sure. And just going, you're like
both sets of traits. There's very broadly some, one way or the other, which I'm writing about in a book on the male mind. There are gender differences, and they are in part biological, but humans are extremely adaptable, and so we can learn all sorts of different behaviors during our lifetime. We're good at it. And so men and women are learning to wield overt hierarchical power at bigger and bigger scale, and men and women are learning how to play this inclusion, exclusion, femininity game as well.
Yeah, and let's wrap it up. Person, leader, whoever really listening right now and is already in a professional exile or, feel it coming, not for cancellation reasons, but I don't know that for sure, but,
Imagine a few people have put the crosshairs on you, metaphorically speaking, Joe.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, I would say you've taken a few controversial stances along the way, and a few people might have taken a light swing at you.
Just a little bit, especially doing the show that I've learned is you got to try to bite your tongue sometimes. There's been times where I haven't and I pop back and then I'm like,
Yep.
then I take that step back, but
things belong only as thoughts, Joe.
yes,
And freedom of thought too, just like I'm in freedom of speech. But you'll notice I'm not, it's not a political vitriol here, like there's happening on the left and the right, not thrilled about living in a society that's polarized because we're at risk of breaking the system if we keep going down this path. And I do not want to live in a country that has a broken system.
well, I mean, very first realistic step outside of calling you, that take towards getting back in the game.
Yep. Very first step is dealing with the trauma. And we're being canceled or panicked. Understandably so. There's all sorts of ramifications that come from this, which are bad and many of which are unpredictable. And sort of like, sort of sliding down a cliff face, trying to get purchase as you're going over the edge and realizing, wow, this is not going well. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to stop this, right? That's how they feel.
Okay.
And some of these people would call me sooner because I could actually help significantly while it's happening. But what I found is when they're that panicked, the way I'm talking and thinking about this is too strategic for them. And when people are panicked, the hindbrain takes over, right? This is why people sell their stocks after a market crash. Is a very primitive part of the brain called the amygdala, on the hippocampus, takes over, and it's the part that's designed to get you to run from a lion, right? It's not super strategic and sophisticated. And so the people start reacting and often make things substantially worse because of the things they do and they say in this reactive hindbrain primitive kind of way. If I could get to them sooner and help them deal with the trauma sooner, that would stop and they could start taking genuine strategic corrective moves. But that trauma, that's the first thing, because as long as they're traumatized, whenever the topic comes up, they're likely to say or do something that will make it worse. And the first step is to stop digging the hole.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Where can people find you? Where they can get a hold of you? Follow your work.
Cancelledleader.com. I tried to make it really simple. Cancelledleader.com. And even if you haven't been canceled, go to the resources page and watch the little clips and stuff. There's the link to the Pell special. There's a link to the Daily Show thing on R. Kelley. There's some good fun stuff there and some articles, some which I wrote, some which other people wrote. A link to my Substack article about Kevin Spacey and Ricky Rosselló, and it's clean fun. But it's if someone's been canceled, about to be canceled, those are the people I really want to talk to and help, and you can reach me through that site.
Okay, everybody, don't forget to check out. The link will be down here at the bottom. And then it'll also be down in the description, all that stuff, and it'll be in the article. Tim Kelley, I really appreciate you coming on and taking your time today. Like I had told you earlier, when I seen that, I was like, I've got to talk to this guy. Like I got to get him on there, and you see certain things, and you're like, yeah, that's the guy. I got to get that.
Well, I really wanted to support you. I know you well enough to know whether I agree with all of your views or not. I'm sure I don't.
Nobody does.
Right. Any random person I meet on the street, the chances that I'm going to agree with them about everything are pretty much zero, right? But the thing I really appreciate about what you're doing, Joe, is this idea of the middle ground. Like we've center in our political debate. There's a huge mass of people in the center who have slightly varying views on different things, but they're kind of in the middle. And though our government is supposed to represent people's desires and views, and every year those people have less representation because the people on the far extreme right and the far extreme left are getting more representation proportionally compared to the population, right? It's not how the system is designed to work. And so I always try to help. Ricky Rosselló is another one of these. My son is another. I'm always trying to help people who are trying to shore up the political middle. We don't all have to agree. We do have to get along, and we do have to solve the problems we're facing together. And so I salute you and I support you for trying to shore up the middle.
Yeah,
Thank
I appreciate enjoying my contents. That I make some YouTube shorts, kind of pick strings, I'll be like, oh my God, look at this guy and look at that. But 99% of my content's about like, hey, how do we find the balance? But I'm not gonna lie, I do take a little bit of a pleasure, kind of extremes and kind of a little bit,
entitled little snarkiness, and
and I'm like, great sometimes. But I also tell people out there, be like, hey, I'm a middle of the ground person. But there's a lot of instances where I'll side with the right, or there'll be instances where I side with the left.
Depends on the topic.
I think that's perfectly normal.
Yep.
And they don't agree with that. And then the common thing with centrism is they'll go, that means you don't stand for anything.
Not true at all. It means what I stand for doesn't fit neatly in either of the prepackaged sets of beliefs that I'm supposed to
Yes.
subscribe to.
You said it's spot on, man. Woo, choke it.
Choked up about it. That's all right.
You can judge a company's entire philosophy by its cheapest product. That's why I looked at Brio's nose and ear trimmer before I even considered any other product. And what I found told me everything I needed to know. Most nose trimmers are a joke, a weak motor that pulls, that ouch. Brio's is a statement, a powerful motor, a clean cutting blade. It is definitive proof that their obsession with engineering is real. And that proof is the most valuable feature they offer. It removes risk. It gives you the confidence to invest in the flagship Beardscape products, knowing the philosophy isn't just a marketing copy. It's built into every tool they make. Start with the proof, upgrade your system today. The code is MiddleGround at brioforlife.com.